just seconds, sister.
Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order initially launched late 2019, and it was one of my favorite games of the year. I played on PC, but with the recent news of Lucasfilm Games, we were also given several next-gen updates for this fantastic Star Wars game. Seriously, please play it. And I'm happy to report that after doing some fast analysis on the updates made to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, it continues to be a must-play game on the next-generation platforms, and with these enhancements, it looks better than ever.
What a score! It's a real scrapper's payday.
So originally there were some data streaming issues. That was the main thing looking back to what Digital Foundry covered, and I didn't experience those at all, probably due to the fact that the new internal hard drives are just insanely fast. But let's take a quick look at each of the platforms and what I discovered with each in terms of native resolution and frame rate. So on the PS5, they claim that it's locked at 1220p and 60 frames per second. What I actually discovered was that they were absolutely right. It is 1220p. I did multiple pixel counts, and that is the native resolution of the game, and largely it locks at 60 frames per second. It should be noted that post-processing was increased up to 1440p. So the frame rate graph on the PS5 is pretty boring because it barely ever dips below 60 frames per second, at least through the entirety of the 30 to 40 minute long intro. I was a little disappointed to see that there is no 30 frames per second mode on the PlayStation 5, but this game still looks amazing on the PlayStation 5 console. Now, when we jump over to the Xbox Series X, it offers a 30 frames per second mode at native 4K, a truly impressive feat, or a 60 frames per second mode that, based on my pixel countings, is more often at a base resolution of 1440p. EA claims it could dip down to 1080p, which it likely will in some of the more taxing later levels, but I was only able to ever get a count of 1440p, and it was consistent every time I could find a countable edge to calculate the native resolution. This is exactly the kind of option that I had always hoped for on next generation games. The option to have a base resolution of 1440p upscaled to 4K at higher frame rates, or true 4K at 30 frames per second for now, that could eventually be increased up to 60 frames per second at 4K when possible. So on the Xbox Series S, we are operating at a much lower base resolution. This was the first sub 1080p counts that I got. Based on my calculations, we're running at around 864p to 936p on the Xbox Series S, but at 60 frames per second. There are no other options on the Xbox Series S as far as I can tell. This was the one platform where I noticed some odd frame rate drops during the fly-in, but otherwise it stabilized and locked around 59 to 60 frames per second. There were a few funny moments where characters would pop into the environment really quickly, and that's a common tactic where they're trying to sort of sneak in the positioning of the characters as they switch camera angles, but you kind of catch it on the Series S with the 60 frames per second frame rate. So the claim was that it runs lock 60, and that's up from around 45 frames per second, and they come really, really close to achieving that, and it is a dramatic improvement. But I want to go back and just talk about the fact that the Xbox Series X is running at native 4K, 30 frames per second, locked, because that is just incredibly impressive. This is probably one of my favorite Star Wars games of all time. I'm incredibly happy to see this, and the fact that it's on Game Pass and runs at a higher native resolution in all modes is quite the accomplishment. Still, if you're a PS5 owner, you're getting locked 1220p at 60 frames per second. It would have been great to see a 30 frames per second mode, it just didn't happen this time. So to get all this captured analysis, I had to play through the intro 5 times. But I just wanted to throw together some numbers and show you guys what we are looking at in terms of performance for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Now, if you've never played this game, please give it a chance and let me know what you think in the comments below. After seeing how much you guys like the unscripted format, I did a little bit of scripting, a little bit of off the cuff here, and I hope you continue liking these performance reviews. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, this is Destin, signing off.